Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06 on this Monday morning in your nation's capital, 7th day of July. Thanks for joining us on a very busy news cycle, but we're going to keep up for you. That's what you expect. In 30 minutes, we're going to check in with Ruby Chen. He is the father of an American hostage from the October 7th Nova Music Festival massacre. We'll speak with him about the latest here between Israel and Hamas and potentially a peace summit with Prime Minister Netanyahu here in Washington, D.C. It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel. Good morning, Bethany.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here as always.
Thank you for being with us. It's a busy, busy news day. We're going to get to all of the stories, but I think that the eyes of the world are turned to Washington, D.C. right now because of Prime Minister Netanyahu's arrival and what could be a pretty momentous week. So let's bring in a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. He focuses mostly on Iranian security and political issues. He's Behnam Taleblu. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly.
Yes, you are, sir. Good morning. Greetings to you both.
Good morning. Thank you. First of all, Bethany and I both noted earlier that it was rather remarkable to see our ambassador, Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel, accompanying Prime Minister Netanyahu back to Washington, D.C. to participate in these conversations. I don't recall that happening in the past unless I just didn't notice. What do you make of that?
No, I think you're quite right, and I think it also goes to prove yet again that there's a more personalist element to the Trump administration's foreign policy and even diplomacy in Term 2 compared to Term 1. The cards are being held close to the chest, but they're being held close to the chest by a host of trusted advisors and personalities that play a very key role on a key series of issues. So, during both Term 1 and, between Term 1 and Term 2 in the public, Ambassador Huckabee really did have the president's ear and trust. So I'm not shocked that he's doing this, but it is yet another sign of the more personalist element of the Trump administration's foreign policy and diplomacy.
One of the things that I found really remarkable recently was when Benjamin Netanyahu, for the first time, actually went to one of these border communities that was absolutely ravaged on October 7th at Nir Oz. He hugged one of the hostage families that has been most critical of him. Do you think that what do you think about these hostage negotiations? We saw 50 hostages there. 20 of them or so are still alive. Do you think that we're going to see, with hopefully a Gaza peace deal, and obviously, there's a lot to go before we get to that point. Do you think that we're going to see a full release of hostages, or is Hamas going to hold some back as future bargaining chips?
I mean, there is no real, deal without getting all the hostages out, particularly all in one go, both alive and deceased at this point in time, in my view at least. There's no utility in just, another 10 or another 5 and giving Hamas yet another lease on life, because that's precisely what they're looking to do. Yeah. Now, I think looking at it from the D.C. perspective, there's no doubt the Trump administration is going to try to turn a military win against the patron of Hamas, the Islamic Republic of Iran, into a political win and try to get some kind of pressure for a deal with respect to the Netanyahu government and Gaza for hostages. But here I think it behooves everyone to see this as Hamas bargaining for its life, just like the Islamic Republic bargaining for its life. And that's where both Israel and America cannot afford to fall short.
So I saw in a BBC report that even Hamas is admitting that they've lost 80% of their sort of manpower and that they've more or less lost control of Gaza. Do you think that that is factoring in, or are they, because the deals that I've seen mentioned and talked about, it's like 8 hostages on the first day, 10 body. Like, it's still this piecemeal thing that we've gotten used to over the course of the last year and a half. Is the deal that the Trump administration is pushing and the Netanyahu administration, is it going to be all at once, it's finished?
Well, I think there's a difference between phased that accomplishes everything and then a piecemeal approach. I think there's still a way to get a phased agreement to get everyone out in time, and also to provide the Israelis both time and political space to see what's next or what's most palatable when it comes to Gaza and reconstruction and governance. But when it comes to Hamas, I mean, they will use any opportunity possible, whether that's under the auspices of the peace deal, under negotiations, or even under continuing the war, to be able to create more chaos. Because let's forget, these are folks who exploit chaos and this is how they live to fight another day. So I think, again, this is something both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu need to keep in the back of their mind as they're trying to, end military operations for the Israelis with respect to the Gaza Strip, and also at the same time finding a way to get the hostages back.
We're speaking with Behnam Taleblu. He's with Foundation for Defense of Democracies. I mentioned in the introduction that you focus quite a bit on Iranian security issues, and I'd love for you to sort of pivot there because I think that the bombing strike against Iran is certainly seen right now as an incredible achievement of our military and the Trump administration strategy. And that was very much a partnership with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli military. How did that experience, do you think, and the partnership and the cooperation that those two countries had going after Iran, how might that sort of reinforce and stabilize the relationship as what appears to be a approach that the Trump administration has taken with Netanyahu to sort of move him faster toward ending the conflict with Gaza, or with Hamas, I should say, than maybe Prime Minister Netanyahu is comfortable with? You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's no doubt the president sees the multiple conflicts of the Middle East, be it with respect to the Houthis in Yemen, be it with respect to Hamas in Gaza, or even the patron of these two groups, the Islamic Republic of Iran back in Tehran. The president sees there as potential deals to be had, or at least political space for a deal. But also, as you've seen with respect to the Houthis and again with respect to the Islamic Republic of Iran, he was willing to pull the trigger when others weren't. I mean, he was the first to be able to designate the Houthis as a terrorist organization late in Term 1 administration. And with respect to the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear program, how long have we heard? I think about 5 presidents now in the post-Cold War period, all of them saying some version of all options on the table, and all of them saying some version of, the regime in Tehran cannot get a nuclear weapon. Only one of them pulled the trigger. So I think he's cognizant of the military victories that the U.S. has achieved, some of which was, the way was paid for that military victory through previous Israeli rounds of fighting, such as going after the air defenses across Iranian territory or the long-range strike capabilities of the regime in Tehran. But there's no doubt I think he wants to pivot from a military win to a political win, and depending on exactly what Bethany said, which is a timetable or phased or piecemeal approach to what comes next in Gaza, that could come with some friction.
So I speaking of Houthis, I wanna go there next. So my Israeli friends were all woken up at 4:00 in the morning today from another missile. The Houthi patooties is what they call it. They, once we see a cessation, hopefully in Gaza, where is American involvement going to come in to put an end to the Houthi threat? Because that is a huge threat also to the American, ships and everything that are passing through. But it seems like the Americans made a deal to the side of the Israelis. Does that signal that there is some daylight between the two countries?
I wouldn't necessarily say daylight, but I do think the Trump administration much more narrowly scopes the threat from the Houthis to being a maritime one in the Red Sea than with respect to, firing ballistic missiles all over the place. But again, the Trump administration and multiple American administrations before them have been trying to build a more integrated air and missile defense architecture with the Israelis, with the Arabs, with other U.S. partners in the region. And that integrated air and missile defense infrastructure should be going after and preventing the Houthis from being able to launch and successfully land these projectiles. And while I do think that the administration did, you could say, turn the other cheek when it came to continued continued missile strikes by the Houthis post-Iran deal ceasefire against Israel, what I think they cannot afford to turn a blind eye to is the maritime attack that also occurred yesterday. The Houthis now didn't take credit for it, but there was a UK vessel, I believe, that actually had to abandon ship that was hit with explosives. And this, coupled with the successes the Trump administration has had in the post-October 7 Middle East and also post-June 12 conflict with Iran, could strengthen their hand to come back and hit the Houthis again for violating the ceasefire, just like the Israelis just 2 days ago have struck major Houthi targets across Yemen.
I try to keep reminding our listeners, our Navy, the United States Navy, has been engaged in conflict, in hot-firing conflict with the Houthis for a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. We've gotten a bit of a respite here with this ceasefire, but you're right, this is very much a maritime situation and quite dangerous as well. I want to keep it just for one last question here, sir, if I could, since you're an Iranian expert. Everyone talks about the Arab Street for the last several decades. What's going on the Persian Street right now? I think a lot of people were hoping after the bombing raid and after the humiliation of the Iranian regime on the international stage, that maybe there could be some signs of an uprising there and the people of Iran could finally take their nation back?
Well, we've actually seen before the Arab Spring and before folks started to focus on the Arab street, a boom and bust cycle of protests across Iran that really moved from being pro-reform towards pro-revolution and seeking to topple the current political order in Tehran. I mean, you have an Islamist authoritarian government at the helm and a nationalist and secular government in terms of society. And these two things are like oil and water, and they don't mix. And we've seen, particularly since Trump term one, when there's been a lot of foreign pressure on the regime, increasing scale, scope, different demography and geography of anti-regime protesters. Now, in my view, I think it was premature and even borderline foolish to think that during a shooting war you could get a very moderate population to be able to go out onto the streets. But now that the shooting has stopped, and now that the Iranian population has seen how neutered the regime in Tehran has become, neutered, unfortunately, not against them, because they still have this major apparatus of repression that they're using to jail, arrest, torture, and kill dissidents and anyone that they're accusing of being a Mossad spy now. But that as Iranians go back to normal, they'll realize that their normal really was not normal at all. And the same things that got them onto the street in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and most importantly, with the Women's Life Freedom Movement in 2022, 2023, in my view, will bring them onto the street again.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, though. Really appreciate it. Very informative. Great way to start the day on what's going to be a very busy week here in international relations.
Thank you, Behnam.
Thank you.
It's 8:17.